Imagine this. You're standing under a dark, endless sky. No city lights. No phones. Just you and a billion stars scattered like diamonds across black velvet. You look up, and for a moment you feel so small, so incredibly small. And then a question rises in your heart. Where did all this come from? Why am I here? What does it all mean? Now, pause for a second. If you asked that question 5,000 years ago, someone might have told you a beautiful story about gods and creation. They'd speak of divine hands shaping the earth, breathing life into clay, painting the stars across the heavens. But if you asked that same question today in a science classroom, someone might show you equations. They'd talk about the Big Bang, about atoms and energy, about billions of years of cosmic evolution. Two answers, both trying to touch the same mystery. And here's the strange part. Somewhere along the way, we started to believe these two answers were enemies, that you had to choose science or religion, reason or faith, facts or belief. But what if I told you that this war was never supposed to happen? What if science and religion were never meant to be opponents, but two different ways of asking the same beautiful questions? What if the conflict we see today is based on misunderstanding? In this story, we're going on a journey, not to prove one side right or wrong, not to attack anyone's beliefs or defend anyone's equations, but to understand, to explore, to ask the question that billions of people have wrestled with. Why does science and religion not come together? And maybe, just maybe, by the end of the story, you'll see that they're closer than you think. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and let's begin. Let's go back, way, way back. Picture a world with no books, no schools, no internet, no one to tell you why things happen. You're a human living 15,000 years ago. You wake up in a cave. You hunt. You gather food. You try to survive. And every single day, the world throws mysteries at you. The sun rises. Why? Thunder crashes across the sky. What is that sound? A baby is born. Where did this life come from? Someone you love dies. Where did they go? You have no microscopes, no telescopes, no laboratorios. But you have something else, something powerful. You have imagination. You have stories. And so humanity did what it does best. We created answers. Early humans looked at the sun and thought, someone must be carrying it across the sky. So they imagined a god riding a golden chariot. They named him. They prayed to him. When thunder roared, they didn't know about electrical charges in clouds. They thought the sky itself was angry. So they imagined gods throwing lightning bolts. They built temples. They made offerings. When crops grew, they thanked the earth goddess. When rivers flooded, they believed the water spirits were upset. These weren't lies. These weren't stupid ideas. These were humanity's first attempts to understand the world, to make sense of chaos, to find meaning in mystery. And here's the beautiful part. These stories weren't just explanations. They were also moral guides. They taught people how to live, how to treat each other, how to respect nature, how to find hope in suffering. Religion was born from wonder, from fear, from love, from the desperate human need to understand our place in the universe. And for thousands of years, it worked. But here's what's interesting. Even in the ancient world, some people weren't satisfied with just stories. They wanted to observe, to test, to measure. In ancient Babylon, astronomers tracked the movement of stars, not because they wanted to disprove the gods, but because they were curious. They saw patterns. They made predictions. In ancient Egypt, doctors studied the human body. They performed surgeries. They understood that certain herbs could heal certain illnesses. In ancient Greece, a man named Thales looked at the sky and said, maybe thunder isn't a god. Maybe it's a natural process we don't understand yet. Another Greek philosopher, Democritus, proposed that everything is made of tiny particles he called atoms. He had no equipment to prove it, just logic, just thought. And here's the key. These early thinkers didn't see themselves as enemies of religion. Many of them were deeply spiritual. They believed in gods. They prayed. They participated in rituals. But they also believed something else. They believed that the universe follows rules, patterns, laws. They believed that humans could discover those laws by watching carefully, thinking deeply, and asking questions. This was the seed of science, not as an enemy of faith, but as a tool, a way of exploring the mysteries that religion had already identified. For a long time, these two ways of thinking coexisted. They danced together. They complemented each other. But then, something changed. Fast forward to Europe. Around the year 1500, the world was deeply religious. The Christian Church was one of the most powerful institutions on earth. It didn't just guide people's souls. It also controlled education, politics, and science. Most universities were run by the church. Most scientists were priests or monks. In fact, studying nature was considered a way to appreciate God's creation. But then, slowly, something began to shift. People started making new tools, the telescope, the microscope, better ways to measure and observe. And with these tools, they started seeing things that didn't match the old stories. Let me tell you about a man named Galileo Galilei. Galileo was born in Italy in 1564. He was a brilliant mathematician. He was also a devout Catholic. He believed in God. He went to church. He prayed. But Galileo was also curious. One day, he heard about a new invention, the telescope. He built his own, and he pointed it at the night sky. What he saw changed everything. He saw mountains on the moon. He saw 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. He saw that Venus went through phases just like our moon. And all of this evidence supported an idea proposed by a man named Nicholas Copernicus, that the Earth was not the center of the universe, that the Earth actually orbited the sun. Now, this might not sound shocking to you. You learned this in school. But back then, it was revolutionary. The church taught that Earth was the center of God's creation, that everything revolved around us. This wasn't just science, it was theology. It was about humanity's special place in God's plan. Galileo published his findings. He wrote books. He tried to show people what he had seen. And the church told him to stop. They said, "This contradicts the Bible. This undermines faith. You must recant." Galileo was put on trial. He was threatened. And eventually, under pressure, he said publicly that he was wrong. But legend says that as he left the trial, he whispered under his breath, "And yet it moves," meaning the Earth still orbits the sun, whether we admit it or not. Galileo's trial became a symbol of science versus religion, of reason versus faith, of progress versus tradition. But here's what often gets forgotten. Galileo didn't want to destroy religion. He believed in God until the day he died. He wrote that the Bible teaches us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. He thought science and faith could coexist. The conflict wasn't between science and religion. It was between new ideas and old institutions, between change and control. But the damage was done. From that moment on, many people started to see science and religion as opponents. Now let me tell you about another scientist. His name was Isaac Newton. Newton is one of the greatest scientists who ever lived. He discovered the laws of motion. He explained gravity. He invented calculus. He unlocked the mathematical secrets of the universe. But here's what many people don't know. Newton spent more time studying the Bible than he did studying physics. He believed that the laws of nature were evidence of God's design. He thought that by understanding science, he was understanding the mind of God. Newton wrote, "This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being." For Newton, Science wasn't a replacement for God. It was a way to appreciate God's creation more deeply. But over the next few centuries, the story changed. Science became more organized, more powerful, more successful. Doctors learned how diseases spread. Engineers built machines. Chemists discovered new elements. Every mystery that science solved was one less thing that needed a supernatural explanation. Lightning? Not Zeus, just electricity. Earthquakes? Not angry gods, just shifting tectonic plates. Disease? Not demons, just germs. And slowly, a new worldview emerged. Some people started to say, maybe we don't need religion at all. Maybe everything can be explained by natural laws. Others pushed back. Science is destroying our values. It's making people lose faith. It's cold and godless. The divide grew deeper. And then came the moment that would define this conflict for generations. Let's talk about the questions. The big ones. The ones that make science and religion seem like they're speaking completely different languages. We'll explore 4 of them. Close your eyes and imagine absolute nothingness. No stars, no planets, no space, no time, nothing. And then, suddenly, everything. According to modern science, about 13.8 billion years ago, the universe exploded into existence in an event we call the Big Bang. In a fraction of a second, space itself expanded. Energy became matter. The first particles formed. Eventually, stars ignited. Galaxies swirled into being. And here we are. Scientists can measure this. They can see the leftover radiation from the Big Bang. They can calculate the age of the universe. They can trace it all back to that single moment. But they can't answer one question. What came before? What caused the Big Bang? Why is there something instead of nothing? Now, let's look at what many religions say. The Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." The Quran says, "He is the originator of the heavens and the earth." Hinduism speaks of cycles of creation and destruction, guided by divine consciousness. Buddhism talks about existence without a first cause, an eternal cycle beyond time. These aren't scientific explanations. They're not trying to be. They're answers to the question, who or what is behind it all? Now here's where it gets interesting. Some people say, science explains the Big Bang, so we don't need God. But others say the Big Bang doesn't disprove God. It might actually support the idea of a creation event. Even some scientists wonder, what triggered the Big Bang? What set the laws of physics? Why do the constants of the universe seem perfectly tuned for life to exist? These are questions science struggles with. And maybe, just maybe, there's room for both answers. Science tells us how the universe began. Religion tells us why it exists at all. 2 different questions, not necessarily 2 conflicting answers. Let's talk about you. You're made of trillions of cells. Your DNA contains instructions written in a code more complex than any computer program. Your heart beats. Your brain thinks. You are alive. How did this happen? According to science, life began billions of years ago in the oceans. Simple molecules came together. They learned to replicate. Over millions of years, through tiny mutations and natural selection, they became more complex. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and eventually humans. This is the theory of evolution proposed by Charles Darwin in 1859. Darwin observed that species change over time, that the ones best suited to their environment survive and pass on their traits, that all life on Earth shares common ancestors. The evidence is overwhelming. Fossils, DNA, observations of evolution happening in real time. But here's what makes people uncomfortable. If humans evolved from earlier species, does that mean we're not special? Does that mean there was no divine creation? Many religious texts say that God created humans directly, that we were made in God's image, that we have a soul, a divine spark that separates us from animals. So which is it? Were we created, or did we evolve? Here's the thing. Many religious people have found a middle ground. They say, maybe God used evolution as the tool of creation. Maybe the process itself is the miracle. The Catholic Church, for example, accepts evolution. It says that evolution and faith in God can coexist. But for others, it's harder. They feel that evolution undermines the idea of human dignity, of purpose, of being specially created. And so the debate continues. But notice this: science explains the process. It doesn't explain the purpose. Evolution tells us how life developed. It doesn't tell us why life exists, why the universe bothers to create conscious beings who can ask questions and feel love and search for meaning. Maybe that's where religion still has something to say. Let's imagine something. A person is dying of cancer. The doctors say there's no hope. The family prays. And then, against all odds, the person recovers. The family calls it a miracle, a sign of God's intervention. But a scientist might say maybe it was a rare immune response. Maybe the diagnosis was wrong. Maybe it was a statistical anomaly. Who's right? This is one of the hardest areas where science and religion clash. Religion often involves belief in miracles, events that break the laws of nature, supernatural interventions, healing, prophecy, resurrection. But science is built on the idea that the universe follows consistent laws, that the same conditions always produce the same results, that nothing breaks the rules. If a miracle happens, it's not testable, can't be repeated in a lab. It's outside the realm of science. So scientists often say we can't study miracles. We can only study natural processes. But religious believers say, just because science can't explain it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And here's the deeper question. Can science ever prove that miracles don't happen? Not really. Science studies what usually happens. It can say, this is very unlikely, but it can't say, this is impossible. So we're left with mystery. Maybe some things are beyond measurement, beyond formulas. Or maybe what we call miracles are just natural events we don't understand yet. The debate goes on. Let's get personal. When you think, who is thinking? When you feel love, where does that feeling live? Is it just your brain? Neurons firing? Chemicals releasing? Or is there something more? Something beyond the physical? Science studies consciousness. It maps the brain. It shows which areas light up when you're happy, sad, or afraid, but it can't quite explain why you experience anything at all, why it feels like something to be you. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. Religion, on the other hand, has always said, you are more than your body. You have a soul, a spirit, an essence that continues beyond death. But science asks, where is this soul? Can we measure it? Can we detect it? And when science can't find something, does that mean it doesn't exist? This is the frontier, the edge of knowledge. We don't have all the answers yet. Maybe one day, science will fully explain consciousness. Or maybe there's something beyond the physical that science can never touch. We don't know, and that's okay. Mystery doesn't have to be threatening. It can be beautiful. Let's pause for a moment. We've been talking about conflicts, about disagreements, about questions where science and religion seem to give different answers. But now I want to ask you something. Are they really enemies? Or have we been asking the wrong question all along? Think of it this way. Imagine you're looking at a beautiful painting, a masterpiece, colors swirling together, creating something that moves your heart. Now, a scientist might analyze that painting. They'd study the chemical composition of the paint, the wavelength of the light reflecting off it, the neurological response in your brain when you look at it. All of that is true. All of that is valuable. But it doesn't tell you why the artist painted it, what they were feeling, what they were trying to express. That's a different kind of question. Science is like analyzing the paint. Religion is like asking about the artist. Science tells us how things work, how the universe operates, how life evolved, how stars are born. Religion tells us why we're here, what our purpose is, how we should live, what it all means. These aren't competing answers. They're complementary answers. You don't have to choose one. You can appreciate both. Here's something that might surprise you. Many of the greatest scientists in history were religious. We already talked about Isaac Newton, but there are others. Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, was a monk. He discovered the laws of heredity while tending pea plants in a monastery garden. Georges Lemaitre, who first proposed the Big Bang Theory, was a Catholic priest. Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project, mapping all human DNA, is a devout Christian. He wrote a book called The Language of God, where he explains how he sees no conflict between his faith and his science. And what about Albert Einstein? Einstein is complicated. He didn't believe in a personal God who answers prayers, but he often spoke about a deep sense of awe and wonder at the universe. He said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." He believed that the universe has an underlying order, a beauty, a harmony, and that this points to something beyond random chance. He called it the God of Spinoza, not a God who intervenes, but a God who is revealed in the laws of nature. Whether you agree with Einstein's view or not, the point is this: he didn't see science as destroying meaning. He saw it as revealing deeper meaning. Here's a metaphor. Imagine you're trying to describe a mountain. A geologist might say, "This mountain is made of granite, formed by tectonic activity over millions of years." A poet might say, "This mountain stands tall and silent, a guardian watching over the valley." Are they contradicting each other? No, they're describing the same mountain in different languages. One uses the language of facts. The other uses the language of meaning. Science is the language of facts, measurements, equations. Religion is the language of meaning, purpose, value. Both are trying to understand reality, just from different angles. And here's the beautiful thing: we need both. We need science to cure diseases, build technology, and explore the stars. We need religion to remind us why we should care, to teach compassion, to give us hope when facts aren't enough. Let me tell you something science can never answer. Science can tell you that you're made of atoms, that those atoms were forged in the hearts of dying stars, that you're literally made of stardust. But science can't tell you whether that fact is meaningful or meaningless. That's a choice you make. You can hear "you're made of stardust" and think, "So what? I'm just atoms. Nothing special." Or you can hear it and think, "Wow, the universe spent billions of years creating me. I'm part of something vast and beautiful." Same fact, different meaning. Science gives us the facts, but we decide what they mean. And that's where religion, philosophy, and art come in. Now let's come back to today. We live in a world where science and religion are often at war. At least that's what it looks like on the surface. Turn on the news, open social media, you'll see debates, arguments, people yelling at each other. Science proves God doesn't exist. Religion is holding back progress. Faith is just superstition. Science is cold and soulless. Feels like we have to pick sides. But why? Why is the conflict so loud today? Part of the problem is how we communicate now. On social media, everyone has a voice. That's good. But it also means that extreme voices get amplified. Someone posts, "I believe in both God and evolution," and immediately they get attacked from both sides. Religious fundamentalists say, "You're betraying the faith." Hardcore atheists say, "You're being illogical." The middle ground disappears.
Nuance dies.
Everything becomes black and white. People retreat into echo chambers. They only follow people who agree with them. They only read articles that confirm what they already believe. and the divide grows wider. Let's be honest. Sometimes religion has been used badly. Throughout history, people have used religious authority to resist scientific progress, to silence dissent, to control others. We saw it with Galileo. We see it today when religious extremists reject vaccines, or deny climate change, or oppose medical treatments. This isn't about faith. This is about fear. Fear of change. Fear of losing control. And it hurts everyone. It hurts science because it creates unnecessary opposition. And it hurts religion because it makes faith look ignorant and outdated. But here's the thing. This isn't what most religious people believe. Most religious people aren't anti-science. They go to doctors. They use technology. They appreciate knowledge. The extremists are loud, but they're not the majority. But science has been misused too. In the 20th century, some people used science to justify terrible things. Eugenics, the idea of improving the human race by controlling who can reproduce, was presented as scientific. It led to forced sterilizations. It influenced Nazi ideology. That wasn't real science. That was pseudoscience mixed with prejudice. And today, some people use science as a weapon. They say, if you don't agree with me, you're anti-science. You're stupid. They forget that science is a process. It's about asking questions, testing ideas, and being willing to be wrong. Real science is humble. It says, this is what we know so far, but we could learn more. Arrogant science says, I'm right, and you're an idiot, and that creates division. And then there's politics. In many countries, science and religion have become political tools. One political party says, we're the party of science, and uses it to attack religious people. Another party says, we're the party of faith, and uses it to attack scientists. But this isn't really about truth. It's about power. And ordinary people get caught in the middle. A teacher wants to teach evolution in biology class. A parent wants their child to learn about faith at home. These aren't contradictory goals, but politics makes them seem like they are. So what do we do? How do we move past this? Let's take a breath. Let's step back from the noise, from the arguments, from the pressure to choose sides, and let's ask a deeper question. Is there a way to hold both science and religion in our hearts without contradiction? I believe there is. Think about this. When you say, I love my mother, is that true? Yes, absolutely. But can you prove it scientifically? Can you measure love in a test tube? Not really. You can measure brain activity. You can detect oxytocin. But you can't capture the feeling itself. Does that mean love isn't real? Of course not. It means there are different kinds of truth. There's scientific truth, things we can measure, test, and verify. And there's experiential truth, things we feel, value, and believe. Both are real. Both matter. Science deals mostly with the first kind. Religion deals mostly with the second. And they don't have to fight. Science is incredibly powerful. It's given us medicine, technology, and a deep understanding of the universe. But science has limits. Science can tell you what is, can't tell you what should be, can describe how the brain works, can't tell you what's right or wrong. It can explain the mechanics of life, can't tell you whether life has meaning. Those questions require something else. Philosophy, ethics, faith, and that's okay. Science doesn't have to answer every question. It's not supposed to, but religion has limits too. Religion is powerful for giving meaning, hope, and moral guidance. But religion can't explain how antibiotics work. It can't calculate the orbit of a planet. It can't cure cancer. Those questions require observation, experimentation, science, and that's okay too. Religion doesn't have to be a science textbook. It's not supposed to be. So here's the idea. What if we stopped asking, which one is right, and started asking, how can both help us understand the world? Science explores the physical universe. the measurable, the testable. Religion explores the inner universe, the meaningful, the sacred, and both are part of the human experience. You can be a scientist and pray. You can be deeply religious and accept evolution. You can stand in awe of the Big Bang and still believe it was no accident. Millions of people do this every day. They're not confused. They're not contradicting themselves. They're just recognizing that reality is big enough for both. Let's end this chapter with a thought. No matter how much we learn, there will always be mystery. Science keeps pushing the boundaries of knowledge, but every answer raises new questions. We discovered atoms, then we discovered subatomic particles, then quarks, and we still don't fully understand quantum mechanics. We mapped the human genome, but we still don't fully understand consciousness. We traced the universe back to the Big Bang, but we still don't know what came before, or why the laws of physics are what they are. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the universe is designed to keep us curious, to keep us searching. Both science and religion are responses to that mystery. Science says, let's explore it. Religion says, let's be humbled by it. And both are beautiful. We're near the end of our journey now. We've traveled through history. We've looked at the big questions. We've explored the conflicts and the possibilities. Now let's talk about what we can take away from all this. Whether you're religious or not, whether you love science or not, one thing is universal. Curiosity is what makes us human. A child looks at the stars and asks, why? That question is the beginning of everything. Science, religion, philosophy, art. Don't let anyone kill your curiosity. Don't let people tell you, stop asking questions. Just believe. And don't let people tell you, there's no mystery left. We figured it all out. Both are wrong. There's always more to learn. Always more to wonder about. Stay curious. Science teaches us to be humble, to admit when we're wrong, to change our minds when new evidence appears. Religion teaches us to be humble too, to recognize that we're small, that we don't have all the answers, that there's something greater than ourselves. Both require the same virtue, humility. If you're a scientist, be humble enough to admit that science can't answer every question. If you're religious, be humble enough to admit that faith doesn't explain everything about the physical world. Arrogance is the real enemy, not science, not religion. Arrogance says, I'm right and you're wrong, and I don't need to listen. Humility says, I might be missing something. Let's talk. Not everyone will see the world the way you do. Some people find meaning in prayer. Others find it in equations. Some people feel closest to the divine in a temple. Others feel it in a laboratory. And that's okay. We don't all have to believe the same thing. But we do have to respect each other. You don't have to agree with someone to treat them with kindness. You don't have to share their beliefs to recognize their humanity. Remember what we talked about earlier. The loudest voices aren't always the wisest. On social media, extremists get attention. People who yell, people who attack. But most people aren't like that. Most scientists aren't trying to destroy religion. Most religious people aren't trying to suppress science. The majority of people are just trying to make sense of life, to find truth, to do good. Don't let the extremes define the conversation. Find the people in the middle, the ones who listen, the ones who think deeply. Those are the voices worth following. Instead of asking, science or religion? Ask, what can I learn from both? Instead of asking, who's right? Ask, what's true? Instead of asking, how do I win this argument? Ask, how do I grow in understanding? Better questions lead to better answers. We started this journey with a question. Why does science and religion not come together? And after all this, here's what I think. They don't come together because we've forgotten how to hold two truths at once. We live in a world that loves simplicity. Black and white, right and wrong, us and them. But reality isn't simple. Reality is vast and complicated and beautiful and terrifying. And maybe, just maybe, it takes both science and religion to even begin to understand it. Let me tell you one last story. Imagine a child standing on a beach at night. The waves crash, the stars shine, the universe stretches out endlessly above. The child asks their parent, "How big is the universe?" The parent, who loves science, says, "It's about 93 billion light-years across. It contains billions of galaxies. Each galaxy has billions of stars." The child's eyes widen. "Wow!" Then the child asks, "Why is it so big?" The parent pauses. Science can't answer that. So the parent, who also has faith, says, "Maybe, so that we could stand here, you and me, and feel wonder. Maybe so that we could ask these questions. Maybe so that we could realize how small we are and how precious that makes each moment." The child smiles. And in that moment, science and religion aren't fighting. They're dancing. You don't have to choose. You don't have to be only a scientist or only a believer. You can be both. You can be neither. You can be searching. What matters is that you stay open, that you stay curious, that you stay kind. Because in the end, whether we're talking about atoms or angels, equations or prayers, we're all trying to touch the same mystery. The mystery of existence. The mystery of why there's something instead of nothing. The mystery of why we're here. And maybe the answer isn't in a book, or a lab, or a temple. Maybe the answer is in the search itself, in the questions we ask, in the wonder we feel, in the connections we make. So tonight, when you look up at the stars, don't worry about choosing sides. Just look, just wonder, just feel. And know that whether you explain those stars with physics or poetry, with data or with faith, you're part of something extraordinary. You're part of a universe that made you, and that's worth celebrating. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope I didn't give you answers. I hope I gave you better questions. I hope I didn't convince you of anything. I hope I made you think. Because that's what both science and religion are really about. Not certainty, not dogma, but the search for truth, the hunger for meaning, the courage to face the unknown. And maybe, just maybe, that's where they've been together all along.